10, I'm just going to take you through the feedback for the quiz because there was a few questions that you were constantly getting wrong or that you were making the same mistake on. So it was either me with a misleading question or I just need to clarify it for you. So just some headlines. 82% was the class average, which was amazing. That's the best quiz we've done so far, so well done. 21 of you participated. So well done to Jess, Isaac, Cameron and Max, who got 100%, fantastic. And then Katie and Anna were in the 90s, and then all those people who were in the 80s, just so good, well done, really made up with you. Just to stress, this video is unlisted, so don't worry, your names are not being broadcasted across YouTube for everyone to see, and obviously don't share the link. Okay, so let's get into the questions. So question 1, the 3 themes was arrogance, power and nature. So some of you didn't get that. Some of you thought that there was a theme of love in there. So just make sure that you have got that because that is really important. So arrogance, power, nature are your 3 key themes to these poems. There might be other ones, but I do think you'd struggle to find love in a big quantity, and obviously not war as well. Conflict, possibly, but again, there's not a lot of evidence. Right, the 2 ways that we can interpret the hawk. This is again really important. I think one of the reasons Hawk is a very difficult poem to compare to another one is because it has all these layers to it. The hawk could mean this, the hawk could mean that. So it's really important that you have these 2 things very clear in your mind. The hawk is the symbol of people, i.e. dictators, or people who believe themselves to be godlike, or people who overpower others. You could say the patriarchy, and or it is an interpretation of the dark side of nature, the fact that naturally those who have, are at the top of the food chain are more powerful, and it does give them power over others. Okay, I'm going to keep things like this suggest that power breeds power, or that it's hard to take power away. Of course he wants to keep things like this. He's in control. Why would he want to give up his power? And this is an idea that you can see in politicians or dictators, obviously, definitely, CEOs, even within a school setting. It would be very difficult for Mrs. Coe to stop being head of school and to step down, or for me to stop being head of department. Once you get used to a certain role, it's natural that you want to stay in that role. Not all the time. Sometimes people do want to sort of step down or go in a different direction. But just think about how most people who have some kind of control or who are in charge would find it difficult to take that away, and it is part of our human nature. It definitely doesn't suggest that the hawk is lazy. So number 4, what does Shelley reject about his time period? Quite a few of you got this wrong. It's very, very much about the fact that he just really despised the British Empire. He lived in Britain and he thought it was really arrogant of us to go around and invade these countries and take over them, make them ours. I mean, we would literally invade a country and just take all their natural resources and ship them back home. Sometimes, enslave their people or pay them a pittance, inflict our culture on them. So he really, really, really rejected that, and he was really strongly against that. And obviously the way he depicts Ozymandias, this fallen pharaoh, represents what he believes Britain will end up like. And of course our empire did collapse, so there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. Okay, number 5, it is important that if you got this wrong that you revise the features of a romantic poet, not least because like I said, there's quite a few romantic poets that we look at in the anthology. One of them we haven't looked at yet, Keats. He's like the most romantic of the romantics, so it's very useful to have this clear in your head at this stage. Romantic poets were like anti-science, they were anti-reason and logic. If you think about what had happened before the 19th century, the 1800s, where you had this big explosion of scientific reason and Newton and all that, and an increase in medicine and just scientific reasoning, the romantics were against that. They wanted everything to be focused on nature and feelings and spiritual experiences. And then number 6, what 2 things does Shelley suggest are more powerful than empires, or Aussie specifically? It's definitely art and nature. So art has survived, but through the writing on the statue and of course the sculpture's impression. And then nature, the sand at the end is lone and stretching away into the distance and has outlived every single thing that Aussie ever made or did. Love is more powerful than an empire, but that's not presented in the poem, and nor is war. So art and nature are your answers there. Okay, number 7. Shelley uses the sand to emphasize the power of nature. Now, a lot of you wrote the statue, and I can kind of see where you're coming from in terms of the destruction of the statue represents that nature is more powerful, that time has destroyed the statue. So like the impact of nature on the statue does emphasize the power of nature, but ultimately it's the sand at the end when he describes the sand as stretching far away and that's all that's left. That's what emphasizes that power is, the power of nature is eternal, and that it will always last. Number 8, the writing on the statue is ironic because he says he's the king of kings, and now of course he is the king of nothing. It's not really ironic because he's arrogant, because there's no layers of meaning there. Remember, something that's ironic is when someone says something, there's got to be a contrast. So he says he's king of kings, and there it is written in the desert, and he's surrounded by ruin. So there's a contrast. He's a king of nothing, and that's what creates the irony. Life is Strange, or it's definitely not lasted forever. Obviously, his reign has not lasted forever, and neither did the statue because it's broken. But Life is Strange is just not irony. Maybe it's just a very big fact right now. Okay, number 9. Please make sure you correct this on your anthology, or that you highlight it if you got this wrong, because some of you did get this wrong. Thankfully, no one said cat, I don't think. I'm going to check that no one said cat. He was an Egyptian pharaoh. That's just one of those basic, you get a mark for context for knowing that. That you can just throw in one of your lines. So make sure you've got that correct, especially because he was an actual real person. Okay, number 10. Now, I understand with number 10 who narrates the poem that some of you put Hughes as the writer, but remember the narrator is the person, is not always the writer. The narrator is the person who is speaking to us in the poem. So for Aussie, it is a random person who's met a traveller who's speaking to us. In Hawk Roosting, it is the hawk. He says, I sit in the trees, something about trees. Hughes isn't sat in a tree with his eyes closed. It's the hawk who's speaking to us. So make sure you get that subtlety sorted for your essays. Don't worry, you're not writing an essay anytime soon. Number 11, the central metaphor is definitely the allotment of death. Now, the other 3 are not metaphors, and even though they're kind of central images, arguably, it definitely was allotment of death, and some of you did get that wrong. So remember I said that if you were going, don't forget to analyse that central metaphor. It's a really important image of how destructive and kind of proud the hawk is of the fact that he's growing death, and the real dark side of power and nature is really embedded into that metaphor. So make sure you've got that down, and you've got it clear in your head. And then number 12, it's not true that the hawk wants to try to change things. He wants to keep things exactly as they are, because remember, power breeds power. People want to stay in those positions. He's definitely proud of his killings, because he boasts about how he goes through the bones of the living. His desire to kill is definitely instinctive, and remember the quotation for that is the fact that he rehearses perfect kills in his sleep. That suggests there is a subconscious desire to kill there. And he's definitely boastful. He says, I hold creation in my foot. Okay, nearly there. 13. Which quotation best highlights that it's completely natural for some animals to be more powerful than others? Now, these 2 questions, I think it's quite easy to debate my answers, but the sun's rays are advantage to me, or of advantage, really, I think, highlights that nature has created, or he's naturally more he naturally benefits more from nature than anybody else. There's, you know, everything is an advantage to him, even the sun. So it's like he's meant to be more powerful. Nature's making him more powerful than other things. My feet are locked just kind of describes his feet and doesn't necessarily highlight that nature's given him great feet. Just as a side note, a hawk's feet are really powerful, like the claws. That is one, because they don't attack the prey. Sorry, they don't like carry the prey in their beaks. They carry. I feel like I just got the word beaks wrong. It is right, isn't it? They carry them in the claws. So the design of their claws are really, really, really an advantage to them. So, but my feet are locked doesn't show that. So you couldn't have that one. I kill where I please just kind of displays his attitude rather than that nature has helped him to do that. And then in sleep rehearse perfect kills is more linked to the idea of it being instinctive that he kills. So that would be good to say. Quotation best highlights that it's completely natural for some animals to kill other animals. And the last one that suggests that power makes people controlling. I think now I hold creation in my foot highlights that if he's holding something in his foot, then he's completely controlling it. That is, you know, he's trapping it. He's in charge. He's not letting it have any freedom. And when we say creation, we're talking about the whole of the world, the whole of the universe even. So that definitely highlights that power makes people controlling. Again, I kill where I please is boastful and sort of lacks empathy. The sun is behind me suggests is better for question 13. Actually, that would be another good quotation with question 13, because he's got the sun on his side. He's got the sun, rooting for him. And then the allotment of death again just suggests that he's violent and he's proud rather than he's controlling. So that was your answer there. Okay, I hope that clarifies all the answers. Feel free to send me a message if not. Thank you.